Let's talk about something you've probably heard a million times, that on a cold day, your oil filter just gives up and sends a bunch of unfiltered oil straight to your engine. It's one of those bits of car knowledge that gets repeated everywhere, but is it actually true? Today, we're going to ditch the assumptions, look at the hard data, and finally put this debate to rest.
So the story goes something like this, right? You wake up, it's a chilly morning, and that engine oil is basically as thick as molasses. The pressure spikes, which forces the filter's little bypass valve to pop open, and for the first few minutes of driving, your engine is getting hit with dirty, unfiltered oil. I mean, it sounds plausible, but is that what's really going on in there? Well, the short answer, backed up by some really solid real-world testing, is a big, fat no. If you've got a clean filter in there, that valve almost never, ever opens on a cold start. And in this explainer, we're going to show you exactly why that is. But before we get to the juicy data and the proof, we got to do a quick refresher on how an oil filter even works. Trust me, understanding this is the key to seeing why this myth got so popular in the first place.
It's a beautifully simple design, really. Your oil pump pushes the dirty oil into the filter through all those little holes around the outside. All that pressure then shoves the oil through this special paper-like material, the filter media, which traps all the gunk. And then, voila, the nice clean oil flows out the big hole in the middle and heads back to do its job in the engine.
And when we talk about trapping gunk, let's get a sense of the scale here. The filter media is catching particles that are around 26 microns. To put that into perspective for you, a single human hair is about 80 to 90 microns thick. So we're talking about stuff that is completely, totally invisible. Okay, with the basics covered, let's dig into the core of the confusion. This is where that whole myth about the cold start bypass really comes from, and it all boils down to a huge misunderstanding of one single word: pressure. So why does a bypass valve even exist? Well, think of it as a last-ditch safety feature. Imagine someone just never changes their oil filter, like for 30,000 miles. Eventually, that thing is going to get so clogged up with sludge that no oil can get through. The bypass valve is there to open in that extreme case, because hey, as the old saying goes, even dirty oil is way better than no oil at all.
And this right here, this is the crucial point that almost everyone gets wrong. There are two totally different types of pressure we need to talk about. The one you see on your dashboard gauge, that's your overall engine oil pressure. But that is not what opens the bypass valve. The valve is triggered by something called differential pressure, or what engineers call delta P.
Let's break that down. Delta P is just the pressure drop from one side of the filter to the other. So let's say you have 50 psi of pressure pushing oil into the filter, but on the other side, only 39 psi is coming out. That 11 psi difference, that is your delta P. And it's that pressure difference that the bypass valve is paying attention to.
So here's the magic number. A typical bypass valve is designed to pop open only when that delta P, that pressure difference, hits around 8 to 11 psi. It could not care less if your main engine pressure is 30 psi or 90 psi. All it cares about is how much that filter is getting in the way of the flow.
Okay, so the theory is solid, but, talk is cheap. The only way to know for sure is to actually measure it. So an experiment was set up to find out what that real-world pressure difference actually looks like during a cold start.
And this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Everybody just assumes that cold, thick oil has to be creating a huge restriction, a massive pressure difference across that filter. But to know for sure, you got to get the data.
The setup for this was actually super clever. They put an engine on a dyno and rigged it with two separate pressure sensors. One measured the pressure of the oil going into the filter, and the other measured the pressure coming out. By starting the engine from dead cold and just watching both numbers, they could finally see the true live delta P in action.
All right. The stage is set, the sensors are in place, the engine is ice cold. Let's see what the data actually had to say.
This is the moment of truth. The engine fires up, that thick, cold oil starts to move. According to all the form wisdom, that pressure differential should be through the roof right now, easily enough to pop that bypass valve wide open.
But the data showed something completely different. It wasn't even remotely close. At a steady RPM, while the engine was still warming up, the measured differential pressure, the real delta P, was only 1.5 psi. Just look at that gap. The actual pressure drop was a teeny tiny 1.5 psi. The valve needs at least 8 psi to even start thinking about opening. So on a cold start, that bypass valve wasn't just closed, it was nowhere near opening, not even in the same ballpark.
Okay, so the cold oil myth is officially busted. But what happens next?
I mean, logic would tell you that as the oil heats up and thins out, the pressure difference would probably drop even lower, right? Well, the data had one more surprise waiting for us.
This part is just fascinating. As the engine oil got up to its normal operating temperature, the delta P, it actually started to climb. The restriction across the filter was actually greater with hot, thin oil than it was with cold, thick oil.
So why on earth does this happen? It seems totally backward. The key is to think of your engine as just a big bundle of controlled leaks. See, when the oil is cold and thick, it doesn't leak past your bearings and other clearances as easily. But when it gets hot and thin, it flows through those gaps much more freely. This means the oil pump is actually moving a higher volume of oil through the filter every second, and it's that higher flow rate that actually increases the pressure drop.
Okay, we've gone pretty deep into the data here, but what's the bottom line? Let's tie all this together and talk about what it really means for you, your car, and how you take care of it.
So, here are the crucial things to take away from this. First, if your filter is clean, that bypass valve is almost certainly not opening. Second, cold starts and thick oil are not the boogeyman here. The real enemy, the only thing that bypass valve is really there for, is extreme neglect. A filter that's so clogged it's basically a brick. And that means your absolute best defense is also the easiest. Just change your oil and filter on time.
You know, this quote from the source material just nails it. It really sums the whole thing up. If you're doing the basic, regular maintenance your car needs, that bypass valve is a safety net you'll probably never, ever need.
This whole investigation just goes to show how a piece of common knowledge that everyone accepts can be completely wrong once you actually look at the data. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? What other automotive facts are we all just taking for granted that are waiting to be debunked by a simple test?